It's strange how sometimes all it takes is one small thing to shatter everything. A single moment, and everything you thought you knew about someone can just slip away. But that's exactly what happened to me, and it wasn't even a dramatic confrontation or a scandalous affair. No, it was something much more subtle, something that lingered in the air like a smell you couldn't place, but knew was there. And it all started with a simple comment at a party. You see, I'm not the type of guy who gets worked up easily. I don't jump to conclusions, and I've always prided myself on being calm, collected, logical. I know that when it comes to relationships, communication is key. You don't hide things, you don't keep secrets. But lately, things with my wife, Claire, had been off. At first, I thought it was me. Maybe I was just overthinking things. I mean, relationships go through phases, right? But the longer it went on, the harder it became to ignore. It was just a regular Saturday evening when Claire suggested we go to her friend Melanie's party. Normally, I'd be all in. A casual get-together with people I didn't know too well, a few drinks, a little small talk, and maybe a dance or two. It was the sort of thing I could get behind. But this time, something about the idea didn't sit right with me. It wasn't that I didn't want to go. It was more that I wasn't sure what was going on between Claire and me anymore. We'd been married for almost 3 years, and over the past few months, I'd started noticing her pulling away. Less affection, fewer conversations, more distractions. But I told myself to calm down. Maybe I was just reading too much into things. After all, she was my wife. We were a team. So, I agreed to go. I should have trusted my instincts. From the moment we walked into Melanie's house, something was different. The vibe in the room felt off, like everyone was pretending to be happy, laughing a little too loudly, smiling just a little too hard. But that wasn't what caught my attention. No, it was Claire. She was distant. Not physically, but emotionally. It wasn't like the Claire I'd been married to, the one who would hold my hand, touch my arm, whisper silly things to make me laugh. This Claire was chatting with people, but there was a coldness in her eyes that I couldn't shake. She was laughing, but her laugh didn't sound like hers anymore. It was almost empty. At one point, I tried to approach her. I hadn't seen her in a while, and I wanted to talk, see what was going on. But when I reached her, she was with a guy I didn't recognize. They were talking animatedly about something. I didn't know what, but it was clear they were in their own world. I stood there for a minute, waiting for a break in the conversation, but it never came. They were both so engrossed in whatever they were saying that they didn't even notice I was standing there. Claire didn't even glance at me. Her smile was wide. Her body turned slightly toward him, and I felt like I was invisible. I turned around and walked to the bar. It wasn't until I'd had a couple of drinks that I found myself in a corner, staring blankly at the floor, trying to make sense of everything. I could hear bits and pieces of conversation around me. Nothing particularly interesting, just the usual banter. But then, I heard her laugh again. This time, it was louder, a little too bright, like it was forced. And the more I listened, the more I realized that her laughter wasn't directed at anything. It was just there, like a hollow echo in the room. That's when I caught it. One of her friends, a woman I'd never been particularly fond of, made a joke about relationships, and Claire laughed. Not in a way that I knew, but in a way that felt off. "Oh, my husband would never let me do that," she said, and everyone around them chuckled. It wasn't the joke that caught my attention, it was the way she said it. The way it came across, casual, dismissive, almost as if she didn't really care about what she was saying. I hadn't heard her speak about me like that well, ever. It was as if she was speaking about a stranger, not someone she was supposed to love. I tried to shake it off. It could have been nothing. But deep down I knew. That wasn't the Claire I knew. That wasn't my wife. Later, as the night wound down and people began to leave, I found Claire again. She was by the door, chatting with another group, and once again, I was left standing in the background, just waiting. She didn't even acknowledge me when I stood next to her. The way she looked at me, or didn't look at me, more accurately, felt like a punch to the gut. I tried to speak, tried to say something to break the tension, but my voice felt too loud in the silence. I felt stupid. It was like she was purposely avoiding me. The car ride home was eerily quiet. I wanted to ask her what was going on, why she had been so distant, why everything felt so strange between us, but the words didn't come. I was afraid of the answer. I was afraid she would tell me that things had changed, that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't me she wanted anymore. When we got home, I went straight to the bedroom, But she didn't follow me. She didn't even say goodnight. And that was the moment I knew. I knew this wasn't some passing phase, some momentary disconnection. Something was happening between us, something I didn't understand, but something I had to figure out. And that was only the beginning. What I didn't know then was that the answer was far worse than I ever could have imagined. The night felt like a blur, but the emptiness lingered. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with 1,000 questions I didn't have answers to. I tried to fall asleep, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire's face, but not the face of the woman I'd married. No, this was someone else. Someone distant, someone I didn't recognize. I couldn't understand it. Everything seemed fine a few months ago. We laughed together, planned trips, and talked about the future like it was a given. But now it felt like I was living in someone else's story, like I was just a character going through the motions, waiting for the inevitable plot twist. The next morning, Claire was already gone. She had left for work early, and I didn't even get a chance to say anything to her. Part of me wanted to call her, ask her what was going on, but I didn't. I didn't want to seem like I was overreacting. So I stayed quiet. For the next few days, things didn't get better. In fact, they got worse. Every time I tried to talk to Claire, she seemed distant, distracted, like she was somewhere else entirely. She'd say she was busy with work or had a lot on her plate. But I could tell something else was going on. It wasn't just stress from work. It was something deeper. And then, one night, I got a text. It wasn't from Claire. It was from one of her friends, a guy I'd never met. His name was Ethan, and the message was simple but chilling. I think you should know what's been going on. You deserve the truth. I didn't even hesitate. I called him immediately. Ethan didn't beat around the bush. He told me everything. About the late-night phone calls, the secret meetings, the times Claire had snuck away from home. Apparently, she had been seeing someone else for months. A part of me felt sick, and another part of me felt relief? I don't know. Maybe I was just numb. But I needed to hear it. I needed to understand how deep this betrayal went. Ethan told me that Claire had been emotionally distant for a while, but he'd never imagined it would go this far. She had even talked about me in a way that shocked him. It wasn't the Claire I knew. She'd been playing a game, pretending everything was fine, when really, she was already checked out of our marriage. I hung up the phone and sat there in disbelief. The words Ethan had said echoed in my mind, but I couldn't process them. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I was building a future with, was she really someone else's? Had I been blind to all of this? I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to confront Claire, demand answers, but another part of me wasn't sure I even wanted to hear the truth. What if it was worse than I thought? What if this wasn't just an affair, but the unraveling of everything I had believed in? But then, as I sat there, something clicked. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for her to explain herself. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. No, if Claire wasn't going to give me the truth, I'd have to find it myself. And that's when I started looking. I began going through her things. The little details that didn't seem important at first, her phone, her social media, her emails, they all started to make sense in a way they never had before. The more I uncovered, the clearer it became. Claire had been living a double life. And now, I had to decide what to do with that knowledge. It wasn't easy, the way everything started to unravel. Every new detail I uncovered felt like another piece of glass falling from a broken mirror, sharp, unsettling, and impossible to put back together. I had never been the type to snoop. I always believed in trust and honesty. But now, I was desperate to find the truth. And the more I dug, the more I found. It started small. I noticed Claire's phone one evening while she was in the shower. Her screen lit up with a message notification. It was a name I didn't recognize. The text itself was harmless, just some random conversation about dinner plans. But then I saw the timestamp, late. Too late. And the name that popped up on the screen was familiar, in a way that made my stomach twist. Ethan. I couldn't stop myself. I opened the conversation. At first, it was casual. They were planning some work thing, or at least, that's what it seemed. But as I scrolled up, the tone of their messages began to shift. Claire's replies weren't just about work anymore. They were personal, flirtatious even. The kind of messages that make you feel like you've been punched in the gut. She had sent him pictures, shared jokes, and even made plans to meet up without telling me. The more I read, the more I realized just how far this had gone. I couldn't breathe. I sat there, frozen, holding her phone in my hands. It wasn't just the affair that stung, it was the betrayal of it all. How long had she been hiding this? How long had I been living in a lie? My mind raced. I had to confront her. But I couldn't do it just yet. I needed to know everything. I needed more proof. The next day, I took things further. I went through her emails, something I never imagined myself doing. And there it was, clear as day. A string of messages between Claire and Ethan, discussing everything from secret rendezvous to intimate details about their relationship. She'd been seeing him behind my back for months. It was all there, laid out in black and white. The trust one thought we had built over the years had been shattered, and what was left was a cold, uncomfortable reality I couldn't escape. It didn't end there. The deeper I looked, the more I found. Claire had kept a journal, one that I had never known about. It was hidden at the back of her closet, tucked away behind some old clothes. When I opened it, the words spilled out like a flood, detailing everything I had missed, everything I had ignored. She spoke of her doubts about our marriage, how she had grown bored with our routine, and how Ethan had sparked something in her that she hadn't felt in a long time. Each entry was like a knife to the chest. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had built my life with, had been lying to me all along. And what's worse, she had been planning this. She had been preparing herself to leave, slowly but surely. I could see it now, the subtle signs I had ignored, the little things she had said that never quite made sense at the time. I had been blind, and now I was paying the price. The more I read, the more I felt like I was losing control. I wasn't just hurt, I was angry. Angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, angry at Claire for betraying me, and angry at Ethan for being a part of this mess. But mostly, I was angry at the version of myself that had let this happen. I couldn't confront her yet. I wasn't ready. I needed to gather my thoughts, to process everything that had come to light. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let this go. This wasn't just a simple mistake. This wasn't something I could forgive and forget. Claire had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying everything in my mind. I kept thinking about how Claire must have looked at me, how she must have pretended everything was normal while all this was happening behind my back. The silence between us had never felt so loud. I couldn't stay like this. I had to do something. I had to take control of my life again. But first, I needed to confront her. I needed to hear her side of the story. No more secrets, no more lies. The next morning, Claire acted like nothing had changed. She came downstairs, smiling like she always did, as if the last few days hadn't been a whirlwind of silent tension and buried anger. She greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, a gesture that once felt warm, but now just felt fake. I couldn't bring myself to kiss her back. She asked how I slept, if I wanted coffee, if I had any plans for the day. Her voice was light, casual, completely unaware that everything had shifted in a way she couldn't possibly understand. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, holding my coffee cup, watching her like I was looking at a stranger. Every word she spoke felt like it was coming from someone else, not the woman I'd shared my life with, but a mask she'd been wearing for far too long. I wasn't going to let this go, but I needed to be careful. I needed to approach this the right way. If I confronted her too soon, I knew she'd lie, deny, deflect. I had already seen her do it once before, and I wasn't going to fall for it again. Instead, I decided to test the waters. I casually asked, "So, anything exciting happening today?" Her eyes flickered for a second, a brief hesitation. But then she smiled and said, "Just work. You know how it is." But I knew better now. I could see the cracks in the facade. There was something off in her tone, a small tremor of guilt she couldn't hide. I didn't let it show on my face, but inside, my heart was pounding. Every instinct was telling me that this was the moment where everything I had known about her, about us, was about to come crashing down. "I've been thinking," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Maybe we should talk later. About us." Her smile faltered for just a second, but she quickly recovered. "Sure," she said, her eyes avoiding mine. "Whatever you want." I couldn't wait any longer. I had to confront her. I had to make her face the truth. So, after she left for work, I took a deep breath and grabbed her journal from where I had hidden it. I stared at it for a long time, the weight of what it contained pressing down on me. I knew I couldn't just keep reading and pretending like this wasn't real. I had to confront her with it, to see how deep the lies really went. The hours dragged by. My mind raced with a million thoughts. What was I going to say? How was I going to do this without completely losing control? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this. She owed me that much. That evening, Claire came home later than usual. She was in a hurry, as though she was trying to avoid something, or perhaps someone. I didn't say anything when she walked through the door, but I could feel the tension between us like a thick fog. She tried to make small talk, asking about my day, but I could barely focus on her words. All I could think about was what I was about to do. I watched her for a moment, taking in the way she moved, the way she smiled. It was all so calculated now. Everything felt like a performance, and I wasn't buying it anymore. When she headed toward the kitchen, I followed her. She was standing by the counter, putting her bag down, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. The silence between us was deafening, but I needed this to happen. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. "Claire," I said, my voice steady, but laced with something she couldn't ignore. She paused, glancing at me over her shoulder. "Yeah," she asked, her voice too casual. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I know about Ethan," I said. Her body tensed immediately, her hands gripping the counter a little too tightly. For a second, I thought she might deny it. But then she just turned around, facing me with that blank expression she had perfected over the past few days. "I don't know what you mean," she said, her voice cold. But I wasn't fooled anymore. I took a step closer to her, my eyes locked onto hers. "I know about the texts, the secret meetings, everything." Her face paled slightly, but she didn't say anything at first. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, the weight of everything hanging between us. Finally, she sighed, dropping her gaze. "You've been going through my things, haven't you?" I nodded. I had to know, Claire. I had to understand why everything was falling apart. She didn't respond right away. The air between us felt thick, heavy with all the unsaid words. "I never wanted you to find out like this," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to hurt you, Quentin. But it just happened. I didn't mean for it to get this far." I could feel a rush of anger building up inside me, but I pushed it down. "How long?" I asked, my voice shaking with barely contained emotion. Her eyes flickered to the floor, and that was answer enough. "Months," she admitted quietly. "It started small, and then it just kept happening." I couldn't believe it. Months. She had been lying to me for months, living a double life, and all the while, I had been completely in the dark. "Why, Claire?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you talk to me if things were so bad?" She shook her head. "I didn't know how. And honestly, I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you. But then, I couldn't stop myself. I felt something for Ethan, something I hadn't felt in a long time." Every word she spoke felt like a stab to my heart. "So what does this mean? Are we just done?" She looked up at me then, her eyes filled with a sadness I hadn't seen in a long time. "I don't know, Quentin. I really don't." There it was. The truth. Not the whole truth. Not yet. But enough to shatter what little was left of the life we had built. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to yell at her for everything she had done. But I didn't. Instead, I just stood there, feeling the crushing weight of it all. I felt like I was suffocating. Finally, I took a deep breath, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. "I can't do this anymore, Claire. I can't live in this lie." She didn't argue. She just nodded, and for a brief moment, I saw the guilt in her eyes. But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, the silence between us heavier than ever. The next few days were unbearable. Every time Claire was near, the silence felt suffocating. I could hardly look at her without feeling like a fool. I kept replaying the conversation over and over in my head, trying to make sense of it all. How had I missed it? How had I not seen the signs? But the truth was, Claire had been so careful, so calculated. She had managed to hide it, and I had been too blind to see it. She tried to talk to me, tried to explain herself, but I couldn't bring myself to listen. Every word she said felt hollow. I wanted to hear the truth, the real reason why she had done this. But every time she spoke, I just heard excuses. I spent most of my days at work, buried in tasks to avoid thinking about her, about us. But when I came home, the house felt different. It wasn't a home anymore. It was just a place. A place where we used to share our lives, our hopes, our dreams. Now it felt empty. And so did I. It wasn't until a week later that Claire came to me with a decision. She wanted to talk. I didn't want to hear it. but part of me knew I needed to. We couldn't keep living in this limbo. When I saw her sitting on the couch, her face a mixture of guilt and apprehension, I knew this wasn't just an apology. This was her trying to make a choice. She was trying to decide if she wanted to fix this, or if she was already too far gone. "I've been thinking," Claire began, her voice shaky. "I'm sorry for what I've done to you, to us. I never wanted to hurt you, Quentin, but I know I did. I broke your trust." I didn't say anything. I didn't want to hear another apology. What I wanted was honesty. What I wanted was the truth about everything. All the little lies, the secret meetings, the part of her that had been living with Ethan. "I can't undo what's been done," she continued, her eyes not meeting mine. "But I want to try to make things right. I want us to fix this. If you're willing to try." I took a deep breath, my mind swirling. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell her to leave, to never come back. But another part of me, the part that still loved her, still wanted her in my life, wasn't ready to let go. "I don't know if we can fix this, Claire," I said finally, my voice steady but breaking. "I don't know if I can trust you again." Her eyes welled with tears, and I could see the pain in them. "I understand," she whispered, "but I'll do whatever it takes to prove that I want this. I want us." The room felt heavy. Her words hung in the air, and for the first time since all of this had started, I didn't know what to say. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she was sorry, that she had changed. But I knew deep down that I couldn't just forget everything. I couldn't just erase the hurt, the betrayal. It was there, and it was real. "I don't know, Claire," I said, my voice quiet. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again." She reached out for my hand, her touch hesitant, almost pleading. But I didn't move. I couldn't. "I understand," she whispered again, her voice barely audible. "But I want to try. For you. For us." I didn't respond. I just sat there, feeling the weight of her words pressing down on me, wondering if it was possible to rebuild what had been broken. I couldn't sleep that night. Claire had gone to bed early, probably exhausted from the emotional strain of everything we'd said to each other, but I was wide awake. My mind wouldn't stop spinning. I kept going back to the same questions. What now? Can I forgive her? Should I even try? I kept hearing her voice in my head, asking for another chance. It sounded genuine, but everything inside me screamed that it wasn't enough. She had betrayed me, and no matter how many tears she shed or how many promises she made, I couldn't forget the way she'd treated me, the way she'd hidden the truth from me for so long. But then, I'd remember the way we used to be, the way she smiled, the way she made me laugh, the plans we had. And it made me wonder if it was possible to just forget all of this and start over, to let go of the past and move forward. But how could I? How could I trust her again when everything had been built on lies? The next morning, I woke up to find Claire already gone. I didn't even hear her leave. It felt like I was living in a house that was no longer mine. The emptiness was suffocating. I spent the day lost in my thoughts, trying to convince myself that this was just a phase, that we could work through it. But as the hours passed, the realization settled in. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. No amount of apologies could change the fact that she had hurt me in the worst way possible. And yet, a small part of me, the part that still loved her, was clinging to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. That evening, Claire came home late. Her eyes were red, like she'd been crying, and her expression was hard to read. I didn't know if I was ready to face her again, but I couldn't avoid it forever. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, as she walked through the door. "About what you said. About how we can't fix this." I didn't say anything, just nodded. I wasn't sure what I wanted from her anymore, but I knew I couldn't just sit there in silence. "I don't want to lose you, Quentin," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I've messed up. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to make it right." I could feel my heart breaking all over again. Part of me wanted to take her in my arms and tell her it was going to be okay, that we could make it work. But another part of me, the part that had been betrayed, was screaming to walk away. "I don't know if I can do that," I said, my voice low. "I don't know if I can just forget everything." "I don't expect you to forget," she replied, stepping closer to me. "But I want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to prove that I love you. I've been an idiot, and I regret it every day. But I need you to give me the chance to make it right." There was so much raw emotion in her voice, so much pain. But was it enough? Was it enough for me to risk it all again? "I can't promise that I'll forgive you," I said, my throat tight. but I'm willing to try. I don't know where that will lead us, but I can't just walk away without giving it a chance." Claire's face softened, her eyes welling up with tears. She reached out for me, and this time, I didn't pull away. I let her take my hand. "I'll do whatever it takes," she whispered, as if her words could heal everything. But deep down, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. And even though I still loved her, I wasn't sure if that love was enough to heal the wounds she had caused. The days that followed were difficult. Every conversation felt like walking on eggshells. Every moment was filled with uncertainty. Claire and I were in this strange limbo, neither fully moving forward nor completely stuck in the past. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I felt like we were both just pretending that things would be okay. But I held on. For some reason, I wanted to believe that we could get through this. I wanted to believe that love, despite everything, could be enough. Claire worked hard to prove that she was committed to making things right. She started showing me sides of herself I hadn't seen in months. She was patient, kind, and, most importantly, open. She never tried to hide anything from me again, and slowly, I began to see the woman I had fallen in love with all over again. But it wasn't just her effort that started to heal things. It was my effort, too. I had to be honest with myself, confront my own doubts, and start trusting her again. It wasn't easy, and it took time, but little by little, I began to let go of the anger, the betrayal, the hurt. We had long, deep conversations about what had happened, why it had happened, and how we could rebuild. And as we did, I started to realize that we weren't starting over from scratch. We were just rewriting the next chapter of our story, one where both of us were willing to do the hard work. A few months later, Claire and I stood together, hand in hand, in front of the same people who had witnessed the beginning of our relationship. This time, we weren't just getting married for the sake of a perfect love story. We were getting married because we had fought for it. We had fought for each other, for the trust we had almost lost, and for the future we were still building together. When I looked at Claire on that day, standing beside me with a smile that reached her eyes, I realized something. Love wasn't perfect. It wasn't always easy or straightforward. But love was about making choices, the choice to stay, to forgive, to grow, and to build something stronger than before. We didn't have it all figured out. But as we exchanged our vows, I knew that we had something worth fighting for. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like we were exactly where we were meant to be. And maybe that was the most perfect thing of all.